Aliyah had always been a bright and cheerful girl, the kind of child who tried to stay positive even when life pushed her down. After the accident 3 months ago, her life changed in ways her young mind could not fully understand. She woke up in a hospital with 2 metal crutches and a long road ahead. But even then, she smiled at her father, Mr. Harris, and said, "I will be okay, Dad. I promise." She meant those words. She really did. Mr. Harris was a quiet and humble man. People in the city knew him as a successful businessman, a millionaire who could buy almost anything. But to him, the most precious thing in the world was his daughter. Money meant nothing when he saw Aliyah struggling to climb stairs or walk long distances. He always wished he could take her pain away, even for a moment. Every morning, he dropped her off at school with the same routine: adjust her crutches, fix her backpack, kiss her forehead, and tell her, "Be brave, my girl." And Aliyah always nodded, ready to face another day. But school was becoming harder for her, and no one at home knew the full truth. Inside the classroom, Aliyah tried her best to act normal. She never wanted anyone to feel bad for her. She moved slowly, she needed help sometimes, and she made mistakes when she rushed, yet she always apologized before anyone said a word. Some students were kind. They offered to carry her bag or waited for her to walk at her own pace. But there were others who laughed quietly when she slipped or took too long to reach her seat. And then there was Miss Parker. Miss Parker was the strictest teacher in the school. She liked order, silence, and perfection. To her, Aliyah was a disruption, someone who slowed down the class. She never said those words directly, but her expressions, her tone, and her reactions said everything. Aliyah felt it every day. On the morning of the incident, the sky was gray, and the ground outside was still wet from last night's rain. Aliyah stepped off the school bus carefully, but her crutch landed in a small patch of mud. Before she could react, her foot slipped, and she fell to her knees. Mud splashed across her skirt, and her hands shook from the impact. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying. Other students stared but did nothing. Some were late for class. Some looked away because they did not know how to help. Aliyah slowly pushed herself up, trying to clean her skirt with trembling hands. She hated when people saw her fall. It made her feel weak. It made her feel broken. By the time she reached her classroom, she was already overwhelmed. She walked through the door slowly, her crutches tapping loudly on the floor. Every tap echoed in her ears. Mud dripped from her skirt onto the clean blue carpet. She hoped no one would notice. But Miss Parker noticed everything. The moment Aliyah entered the room, the teacher stopped talking mid-sentence. Her eyebrows lifted sharply, and her lips curled in irritation. "Aliyah!" Miss Parker snapped. "What is this mess? Look at the carpet." The entire class turned to look. Aliyah's heart dropped. Heat rushed to her face. She wanted to disappear. "I am sorry, miss," she whispered. "I slipped outside." Miss Parker pointed at the muddy floor with a cold, disgusted expression. "Why were you not careful? You should think before walking into the classroom like this. You have disturbed the whole class." Aliyah swallowed hard. Her voice came out shaky. "I am really sorry. I know my mistake." "That is not enough," the teacher said loudly. "Stand there and think about how irresponsible you are being. You always cause trouble." The words hit her harder than the fall. Her legs shook. Her hands tightened around the crutches. She could feel every pair of eyes in the classroom staring at her. Some students felt pity. Some felt awkward. Some tried not to laugh. Aliyah's tears finally escaped. I didn't mean to," she whispered, wiping her face. Miss Parker only crossed her arms and stared at her without sympathy. And then, something no one expected happened. The classroom door opened slowly, and a man stepped inside. His expression changed instantly when he saw the scene, his daughter standing alone, covered in mud, crying while holding her crutches, and a teacher pointing at her like she was a problem. Mr. Harris stood frozen for a moment. He had come early to surprise Aaliyah. He had no idea he would walk into this. As soon as Aaliyah saw him, her tears fell harder. She felt safe again. She felt seen. And Mr. Harris felt something burn inside his chest, a silent, powerful anger he had never felt before. He looked at his daughter first. Then he looked at the teacher. The entire room went silent. The classroom froze the moment Mr. Harris stepped inside. He was not an ordinary parent who barged in without knocking. He always followed rules, always respected teachers, and always stayed calm. That was his nature. But the sight in front of him took away every bit of calmness he carried. Aaliyah, his only child, the little girl he protected more than anything, stood trembling in the middle of the classroom. Her skirt was smeared with mud, her hands were shaking, her cheeks were wet with tears, and her crutches wobbled under her weight. Miss Parker stood in front of her with a stern face, as if Aaliyah had done something unforgivable. For a long moment, Mr. Harris did not speak. He did not know whether to walk toward his daughter or question the teacher. His mind could not process how a child who already carried so much pain was left standing alone while being scolded like this. Aaliyah looked up at him with the kind of fear only a child who has been holding everything inside can show. When she whispered, "Dad," it was soft, broken, and desperate. That one word shattered Mr. Harris's heart. He rushed to her side instantly, dropping to his knees so he could look her in the eyes. "Aaliyah, what happened? Why are you crying? Are you hurt?" His voice trembled slightly, the way it only did when he was terrified for her. Aaliyah shook her head, wiping her eyes. "I slipped, outside, there was mud. I didn't mean to make a mess. Miss Parker is angry." She could not finish her sentence. Her breath caught in her throat. Mr. Harris gently held her hand. "It's okay. You're okay. I'm here now." Miss Parker suddenly stepped forward, clearing her throat loudly. "Mr. Harris, I did not expect you to walk into the classroom without asking. We were in the middle of a lesson." He slowly rose to his feet, turning toward her with calm, steady eyes. But there was something new behind them. Something she had never seen in him before. "I saw enough," he said quietly. Miss Parker hesitated but tried to maintain her authority. "Your daughter created a disruption. The carpet is dirty. The class lost focus. I simply told her to be responsible." Mr. Harris looked at the muddy floor, then at the classroom full of students who were staring in complete silence. None of them dared to move. His gaze finally returned to the teacher. "She slipped," he said softly. "She did not choose to fall." Miss Parker tightened her jaw. "Regardless, she needs to learn to be careful." Aaliyah looked down, embarrassed again, even though she had done nothing wrong. Mr. Harris took a deep breath. "She is already careful. More than any child her age should ever be. She checks every step she takes. She watches every corner. She moves slowly because she has no choice. Her legs are still healing." The teacher looked uncomfortable but still tried to defend herself. "I didn't mean to make her cry. Students need discipline. I treat everyone the same." Mr. Harris shook his head gently. "No. You do not treat everyone the same. You treated my daughter like she was a burden." The entire classroom held its breath. Even the children who laughed earlier felt a knot in their stomachs. The cruelty they had witnessed suddenly became clear to them. Aaliyah did not deserve that. None of them did. A boy in the back slowly raised his hand. "Sir. Aaliyah really did slip outside. We saw it. She tried to stand up on her own. No one helped." Another girl added softly. Miss Parker yelled at her as soon as she came in. It wasn't Aaliyah's fault. Whispers began to spread through the classroom. Students exchanged guilty looks. Some felt ashamed they had laughed. Some wished they had stepped in earlier. Miss Parker's face turned pale. "Students, enough. This is not your place to speak." But Mr. Harris raised his hand calmly. "Let them talk. They are telling the truth." Aaliyah's lips trembled. She had held her pain inside for weeks, afraid to tell her father anything. She did not want him to worry. She did not want him to think she was weak. But seeing him stand for her, seeing him speak kindly for her, made her tears fall again. Mr. Harris wiped her cheeks gently and whispered, "No one has the right to make you feel small, Aaliyah. Not here. Not anywhere." Those words filled the room with a quiet warmth. Miss Parker tried one last time. "Mr. Harris, I understand your emotions, but you must see my side too. I run a strict classroom. If I let one child lose control, it affects everyone." He replied instantly, without raising his voice, without showing anger, only truth. "Discipline should never come at the cost of kindness." He paused. "And children are not problems. They are responsibilities." The words hit harder than a shout ever could. Aaliyah leaned into her father slightly, feeling safe in a way she had not felt in a long time. For her, this moment meant everything. She knew her father loved her, but she had never seen him defend her like this. The principal appeared in the doorway, alerted by a student who hurried out earlier. His eyes widened when he saw the scene, a crying student, a silent class, a stiff teacher, and a father standing protectively beside his daughter. Something serious had just begun. The principal, Mr. Dalton, stood in the doorway with a confused expression. He had been called out of a meeting by a breathless student who whispered, "Sir, something is very wrong in Miss Parker's class." He expected noise or a fight, but the silence inside the room was heavier than any shouting could have been. Mr. Harris did not turn when the principal entered. His focus stayed on Aaliyah, whose tiny shoulders shook each time she tried to calm herself. He kept one hand on her back, steadying her gently. Not rushing her. Not pushing her. Just letting her breathe. The classroom felt smaller now, like everyone was standing inside the heart of something fragile. Miss Parker stiffened as soon as she saw the principal. "Sir, I apologize for the interruption. There has been a misunderstanding." Before she could continue, Mr. Harris finally spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but with a voice that made every student sit straighter. "No," he said quietly. "There has not been a misunderstanding. I saw everything." The principal frowned, glancing from the teacher to Aaliyah, then at the muddy floor. "Miss Parker, what happened here?" Miss Parker quickly tried to control the situation. "Sir, Aaliyah came into the classroom with mud all over her skirt. She tracked dirt across the carpet. I asked her to explain herself, but she raised her voice and caused the class to lose focus." Aaliyah's head snapped up. "I didn't raise my voice," she whispered. Mr. Harris placed his hand on her shoulder before she could say more. He understood how easily Aaliyah blamed herself for things she did not do. The principal looked at Aaliyah kindly. "Take your time, dear. Tell me what happened." Aaliyah wiped her face again, trying her best to speak clearly through her emotions. "I slipped, outside. The ground was wet. My crutches, they sank in the mud. I fell." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want to disturb anyone." Some students bowed their heads, feeling the weight of how she had stood up alone in the rain, covered in mud, embarrassed and hurting. "And when I came in," Aaliyah continued softly, "Miss Parker got mad. She said I always cause trouble." Her voice cracked on the word always. Mr. Harris closed his eyes for a second, holding back the anger that threatened to surface. To him, those words were worse than anything else. They were not just unkind, they were damaging. The principal turned to Miss Parker. "Did you say that?" Miss Parker pressed her lips together. Sir, I may have been firm, but only because she entered during the lesson and created a mess. The principal's tone sharpened. She slipped outside, Miss Parker. This was not a deliberate act. Mr. Harris finally stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying more weight than anger ever could. My daughter wakes up every morning knowing she cannot walk like the other children, he said. She knows she must be careful. She knows she moves slower. She knows she is different. He looked at the class, and all the eyes met his without fear, only sincerity. But she also knows she tries her best. Aliyah blinked up at him, surprised that he understood so deeply what she felt inside. Mr. Harris continued, she did not choose to fall. She did not choose to get hurt. She did not choose to bring mud into the room. But she was treated like she did. Even Miss Parker felt her throat tighten. She had never heard a parent speak so quietly, yet so powerfully. Mr. Harris stepped closer to Aliyah and adjusted her crutches carefully, lifting her sleeve to check for bruises. He did not care who watched. The world could disappear and he would still protect her. Is your arm hurting? He asked softly. A little, Aliyah whispered. He nodded, his jaw tightening for a second. Then he turned to the principal again. Do you know why I came early today? The room remained silent. To surprise my daughter, he said. She has been so brave these last months. She never complains, never cries in front of me, never shows how hard it is for her. I wanted to pick her up early, take her somewhere she likes, give her a small break. His voice softened even more. Instead, I found her being scolded while she stood shaking on crutches. Some students felt tears sting their eyes. Miss Parker lowered her gaze to the floor. She had never thought about the burden Aliyah carried every day. She only saw the disruptions, the delays, the mistakes, but never the effort behind them. The principal shook his head slowly. Miss Parker, this is not the way we treat our students. Especially not those who need extra care. Mr. Harris did not ask for punishment. He did not raise his voice. He simply said the truth. Children remember the way adults make them feel. Please make sure no child is ever made to feel this way again. Aliyah's hand gently wrapped around her father's. That one small gesture said everything, gratitude, relief, and love. Mr. Harris squeezed her hand back. The silent anger he carried had spoken louder than shouting ever could. And everyone in the room felt it. The principal stepped fully into the classroom, closing the door behind him so no one else could disturb the moment. The air inside the room felt heavy, but it was no longer filled with fear, it was filled with truth waiting to be spoken. Mr. Harris stood quietly beside Aliyah, letting her lean slightly against him for support. She had stopped crying, but her breaths were still uneven. Her crutches rested against her arms as she tried to stay steady. The principal's face grew serious as he looked at the students. I want to understand what happened, he said gently. Anyone who saw anything should speak honestly. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, a hand went up. It was the boy who usually sat in the back, Tommy. He had laughed earlier when Aliyah slipped, but now his eyes looked guilty. Sir, he said quietly, Aliyah really did slip outside. I saw her fall. She tried to get up alone. She didn't want to come late. Aliyah looked at him with surprise, not expecting him to speak for her. Another girl raised her hand, Mia. She often sat beside Aliyah and knew more than she ever said. Sir, Aliyah never disturbs the class. She always tries to hurry. She is always scared of being a problem. She glanced at Miss Parker. And, sometimes Miss Parker scolds her too much. A few students nodded silently, afraid to speak loudly but brave enough to show agreement. Mr. Harris listened with a calm expression, but inside, each word from the children pierced him deeper. Aliyah had been carrying so much quietly, too quietly. The principal turned to Miss Parker. It seems the students have a different version of events. Is there anything you wish to explain? Miss Parker's face tightened. She opened her mouth, then stopped. The weight of the children's honesty made it impossible to pretend anymore. She took a slow breath. Sir. I may have reacted faster than I should have. I did not expect her to come in with mud all over her. The room was clean. We were in the middle of a lesson. That still doesn't justify humiliation, the principal replied firmly. Miss Parker tried again, her voice quieter this time. I did not think she would feel so hurt. Mr. Harris's voice entered the space gently, yet strongly. Every child feels hurt when they are yelled at. But a child who already fights every day to simply walk, feels it twice as deeply. Miss Parker looked down. She had no answer. Aliyah shifted slightly, trying to say something. I didn't tell anyone when I slipped. I didn't want to make trouble, she whispered. That confession broke something in the room. Her father turned to her immediately. Aliyah, listen to me, he said softly but firmly. You could never be trouble. You hear me? Never. Her eyes filled with tears again, not from pain this time, but from relief. The principal stepped forward. Aliyah, you did nothing wrong today. You slipped. It happens. You came to class even though you were hurt. That is not something to punish. He turned to the teacher. We must remember that every child deserves understanding. Miss Parker swallowed hard. The truth was hitting her in ways she had never prepared for. Seeing Aliyah shivering, hearing the children speak, watching Mr. Harris stand so protectively, it made her realize how far she had gone without noticing. Mr. Harris, the principal said, I assure you, we will address this properly. Disrespect or lack of empathy toward any child, especially one who is healing, will not be tolerated. Mr. Harris nodded, but he wasn't finished. He looked around the class, at each child, one by one. His expression wasn't harsh. It wasn't angry. It was honest. Children, he said softly, you saw Aliyah fall. Some of you felt bad but stayed quiet. I understand. It is not easy to speak up. But remember this, he paused. When you see someone hurting, even a small act of kindness can change everything. Several students lowered their eyes. They knew he was right. Tommy raised his hand again, nervously. Sir. I'm sorry I laughed earlier. Aliyah looked at him, surprised again. He shrugged helplessly. I didn't mean to make her feel worse. I didn't think. Mia whispered, it's okay, Tommy. But Mr. Harris gently corrected her. It is kind of you to forgive, but Tommy should also learn from it. Words and laughter can hurt more than a fall. Tommy nodded, taking it seriously this time. The principal turned to Miss Parker again. As for you, we will discuss appropriate steps once I speak with the administration. But for now, I expect a direct apology. Miss Parker hesitated. Apologizing to a student felt like a loss of authority to her, but today, authority didn't matter. Humanity did. She approached Aliyah slowly, her voice softer than anyone had heard from her before. Aliyah. I am sorry, she said. I should not have spoken to you that way. I should have asked if you were okay first. I forgot that you are still recovering. I hope you can forgive me. Aliyah looked at her teacher carefully. Her heart was gentle, not hardened. It's okay, miss, she whispered. I just didn't want anyone to be upset. Mr. Harris closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the innocence in his daughter's words. How could such a gentle child ever be treated harshly? How many times had she stayed silent just to protect others? The truth had come out today, not just about the incident, but about Aliyah's quiet suffering, the teacher's thoughtlessness, and the student's silence. Mr. Harris put his arm around Aaliyah's shoulder. Things were going to change now. For her. The principal took a slow breath as the room grew quiet again. The truth was no longer hidden, and now it was time to act on it. He stepped toward the students and the teacher, his voice calm but full of authority. "Everyone, please prepare yourselves," he said. "We are going to move forward from this in a way that helps us grow." He looked at Aaliyah first. "You are strong for speaking up. That is not easy, especially when you were already hurting." Aaliyah lowered her eyes, shy but grateful. Mr. Harris stood beside her, gently rubbing her shoulder. He didn't push her to respond. He understood that she needed time to take in all the emotions of the moment. Then the principal turned to Miss Parker. "You made a mistake," he said plainly, "but mistakes only become worse when we pretend they did not happen." Miss Parker swallowed hard. Her shoulders slumped, the usual stiffness gone. "I understand, sir," she said quietly. "I should have been kinder. I should have helped her instead of reacting too quickly. For years," the principal said, "we have focused more on rules and discipline than empathy. I should have done better too." That surprised everyone, even Mr. Harris. The principal continued, "This school cannot be a place where children fear making mistakes, especially those who struggle with challenges. We must make space for every child." Miss Parker nodded slowly, her eyes softening. For the first time, she looked at Aaliyah not as a student who slowed things down, but as a child carrying a weight she never asked for. "I truly am sorry, Aaliyah," she repeated more sincerely. "I will do better." Aaliyah offered a tiny smile. "Thank you, Mississippi." Mr. Harris watched the exchange carefully. His anger had cooled, not because he forgot what happened, but because he saw genuine honesty in the room. He saw faces that understood the impact of their words. He saw a teacher who, although late, finally recognized the value of compassion. The principal straightened his posture and addressed the class. "From today onward, we will be setting new rules in this school." The students leaned forward, curious. "Number 1, he said, raising a finger, "no student will ever be scolded publicly in a humiliating manner. Teachers will speak with students privately if something goes wrong." Several students nodded with relief. Some had lived through moments they wished no one had seen. "Number 2, the principal continued, "students who need extra time or help will receive it without judgment. Not with sighs, not with frustration, not with ridicule." And then he looked directly at Aaliyah. "And number 3, every teacher in this school will complete empathy and behavior training. Including myself. We all need to learn how to treat children with respect." Mr. Harris appreciated the honesty. There was no defensiveness, no excuses. Just responsibility. Students exchanged glances. Some looked ashamed for staying silent earlier. Others felt relieved to see the adults taking this seriously. Then something unexpected happened. Mia, the girl who often helped Aaliyah, stood up from her desk. Her voice was soft but clear. "Sir. I want to help Aaliyah walk to class from now on." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "I want to," Mia said. "You always try to do everything alone. You don't have to anymore." Aaliyah blinked, touched more deeply than she could explain. No one had ever said that to her before. People helped when they felt sorry for her, but Mia offered help because she wanted to, not out of pity, but out of genuine kindness. Then Tommy raised his hand. "Sir, can we clean the carpet?" The class looked at him, surprised. He shrugged and added, "It's not fair Aaliyah feels bad for something she didn't do." A few students nodded. Then more. Soon half the class raised their hands. "We can help," they said. "We want to make it right." For the first time since the incident began, Aaliyah felt the heaviness inside her chest ease. These simple gestures meant the world to her. It wasn't about cleaning the carpet, it was about people finally seeing her as a person, not a problem. Mr. Harris watched quietly, pride filling his eyes. He had always believed children could show more heart than adults if given a chance. Today, they proved it. The principal smiled gently. "Thank you, students. Your kindness makes this school better." He turned to Mr. Harris. "I promise you, we will correct this. No child should ever feel alone here." Mr. Harris nodded. "Thank you. That is all I want." He then looked down at Aliyah. "Are you ready to go home, my girl?" Aliyah nodded softly. "Yes, Dad." She leaned on her crutches, and before she took a step, several students moved aside to make space for her. Mia walked beside her without being asked. Even Tommy held the door open. It was subtle. It was simple. But it meant everything. Miss Parker watched quietly, her heart unusually heavy. For years she believed strictness made students stronger. Today, she learned something far more important. Kindness makes them human. As Aliyah and Mr. Harris reached the hallway, the school felt different. Lighter. Warmer. Change had begun, not just for Aliyah, but for everyone. The afternoon sun warmed the school courtyard as Mr. Harris guided Aliyah toward the gate. Her steps were slow but steady. Each tap of her crutches echoed lightly, no longer heavy with fear or shame. Behind them, students whispered soft goodbyes, and Mia waved excitedly, promising to see Aliyah tomorrow. For the first time in a long while, Aliyah smiled without forcing it. Mr. Harris helped her into the car, placing her crutches carefully in the back seat. He closed the door gently, then walked around and sat beside her. For a moment, he simply watched her, his brave daughter, trying her hardest every single day. "You did really well today," he said softly. Aliyah looked down. I was scared." "I know," he replied. "But you still stood there. You still spoke the truth. That takes real courage." Aliyah leaned her head against the window. "Dad, am I a burden?" His heart clenched so sharply he felt breathless. "Aliyah," he whispered, "look at me." She turned her head, her eyes tired and vulnerable. "You are not a burden," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You are my daughter. You are my happiness. You make me stronger every day. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you." Aliyah blinked quickly, fighting fresh tears. She wasn't crying from pain this time. She cried because someone understood her, not just her physical struggle, but the invisible weight she carried every day. Mr. Harris squeezed her hand. "And I will make sure you never stand alone again." The car started moving, and the city passed quietly outside the window. Aliyah leaned against her father, the exhaustion of the day finally settling in. She felt safe, truly safe. When they arrived home, the house staff greeted them politely, but Mr. Harris waved them off. Today, he didn't want anyone else involved. He wanted time with his daughter. He helped her change into comfortable clothes, brought her a warm drink, and sat beside her on the couch. The home was quiet, peaceful, filled with the soft ticking of a wall clock. "Dad, what will happen next?" she asked. Mr. Harris took a deep breath. "The school will take action. The principal is serious about change." He paused. "And I will help make sure it never happens again, not only for you, but for every child." Aliyah looked confused. "How?" Mr. Harris smiled gently. "Do you remember the library the school built last year? I funded it." Her eyebrows lifted. "You did?" "I did," he said. "And now? I'm going to fund something else. Something important." He leaned forward, eyes warm with determination. "The school will build an inclusive learning center. A place where children with disabilities can get help, support, tools, and care. A place where they never feel alone." Aliyah's mouth opened in surprise. "Dad, that's amazing. I'm doing it for you, he said. But also for every child who feels different. She leaned forward and hugged him, carefully, gently, but with all her heart. Mr. Harris closed his eyes, finding peace in that single moment. The next morning, when Aaliyah returned to school, something felt different the moment she walked in. Students smiled at her warmly. Teachers nodded with respect. Classmates moved instinctively to clear her path. Mia hurried over with a bright smile. I saved your seat. Even Tommy ran over. Aaliyah. Want help with your bag? Aaliyah laughed softly. I can hold it, but thank you. Miss Parker approached the group slowly. There was no stiffness in her posture today. She looked smaller somehow, more human. Aaliyah, she said quietly, I spent last night thinking about everything. I realize now how much pressure you carry and how little I supported you. I know my words hurt you. I want to apologize again, sincerely. Aaliyah studied her carefully. I forgive you, miss, she said. But, please be kinder to other kids too. Not just me. Those simple words touched Miss Parker more than anything. She nodded gently. You're right. I promise I will. The day passed differently from any other day at school. The classroom felt lighter, more welcoming. When Aaliyah moved, students didn't stare, they helped, encouraged, smiled. During recess, the principal called an assembly. He stood on stage and announced the school's new program, funded by Mr. Harris. We will now build a special center, he said, to support students with physical challenges, learning differences, and emotional needs. Every child deserves understanding. Students clapped. Teachers clapped. Aaliyah sat in the crowd, stunned but proud. The principal continued, and this center will be named in honor of someone who inspired this change, someone whose courage opened our eyes. He looked at Aaliyah with a warm smile. The Aaliyah Harris Inclusive Learning Center. Aaliyah gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Students cheered loudly. Mia threw her arms around Aaliyah. Tommy clapped harder than anyone. Even Miss Parker looked emotional. Mr. Harris stood at the side of the hall, watching his daughter glow with pride for the first time in months. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't the girl with crutches. She wasn't a burden. She was a reason for change. When Aaliyah looked at her father, he nodded once, as if saying, I told you, you are never a burden. And at that moment, she believed him completely.